Em.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great, actually.
Are you?
Yeah, fine. We
So
just had
great.
Easter at our house. We hosted 15 people, but it was beautiful weather. It was all outside. Kids played great together. You know,
You're
fine.
you're
Easy
such
peasy,
you're
baby.
such a good host.
I'm such a good host. I'm a good planner, which makes hosting better.
Yes, of course.
This morning, my husband was like, your time management is insane. Like,
Yeah.
he was like, you'd be a great employee. I was like, thank you.
That is so nice. So
Because he manages people and he's just like, wow.
you really
And I'm
would.
like, yeah, it's because I'm really good at planning.
Yeah. You got
I'm
and you
telling you, it's because we have talked about this before, but the average age of ADHD diagnosis for boys is 8 years old, and for
yeah.
women, it's in their mid 30s.
Yeah.
But I was diagnosed very early, and my parents gave me, instead of meds, all skills,
Yeah. I had none of that.
which is tutoring. And I am telling you, it changed my life.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you, if you have a child who is ADHD or think has any of these signs, get them fucking services early.
Yep. I had absolutely none of that. And so
You
I
had
just
that. And
compensated.
can't you kind of tell sometimes the difference between you
Absolutely.
and me?
Oh yeah, I procrastinate everything.
You procrastinate everything. But, I mean, so you hyper focus in. I can't do what you do.
Yeah.
Yours works in a different way,
Yeah.
right? I no longer have that skill of the hyper focus, the
Yeah.
ADD part that you have.
Well, that's why we work so well together.
Well, exactly. But it is, you do really see it, like,
Yes. Oh, yeah. I did not have any of
so
that.
I have a big props to my parents.
Uh, that's so nice.
That's so nice. All right.
That's,
Ready for an intro question?
I'm so ready.
All right. Do you unpack, like hang your clothes up or put clothes in a drawer on a trip, or do you just live out of your suitcase for the duration of the time?
I think you're going to be surprised at my answer.
You put it away.
I put it away.
That actually, okay, it actually does shock me for you, considering
Yeah.
you're you.
You'd be
Classic
surprised.
type B personality.
Classic type B, but you'd be surprised. Like Sundays, like I like to prepare myself for the week. If we didn't have such like stress, like if work wasn't as like
Yeah.
intense as it is, then I probably would. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I like prep myself and my space for
Hmm.
the week. So if I'm coming back from a trip and I know that I have to get back to work, then I'm prepping myself. I'm putting shit away. I'm doing laundry. Like
Putting shit away.
I'm getting everything together
Yeah.
because otherwise it's just, yeah, living out in my suitcase is not going to work.
I'm going to tell you what I do on a trip.
I'm ready.
I hang up everything that needs to be hung,
Yeah.
and then the rest of the stuff stays in the bag. So I'm a half sea girl.
Oh, this is
Like,
when
I'm
you're
not,
on the trip. I thought this was when you get home.
no, it says on a trip.
Oh, yeah, I unpack.
Either way, it's the same
Either way,
thing.
it's the same. I was just,
No, when I get home from a trip, I automatic the second I'm home, I do everything. I do put everything in the laundry. But
yeah,
on the trip, if it has to be hung, that all gets hung up, and then
yeah,
everything else, like shorts and bathing suits and underpants, like they're staying in the suitcase. I'm using the suitcase as my set of drawers.
yeah. It
You
also
know,
depends on how long I'm there.
it's a good point, right? If I'm there for one night, you really unpacking that suitcase?
No fucking way am I
No,
unpacking.
man, you're staying in that shit.
When you and your partner have different needs, let's talk about it because it happens all the goddamn time.
Because if you marry someone with the exact same needs as you, that would also be very exhausting.
Yeah. Also, we
And you're just
tend
different people.
and we tend to be attracted to our opposites,
Yeah. So
right?
I feel like here's the thing. People talk, when we're talking about needs, you're going to hear this in a lot of different ways. People are going to talk about love languages, attachment styles, conflict styles, mental health, processing needs, right? So like there's like so many different umbrellas this can fall into.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with, a question to sort of get, it's like, how do you tell the difference between their needs being different versus them neglecting the relationship? So let's give an example here. Let's say you're in a relationship and your partner needs a lot more socialization than you do. So they need a lot of time of hanging out with their friends. That's what recharges them. That's what excites them. Great. But it often leads to them not doing much alone time with you, or them coming home when they say they're going to, or them being transparent with what they're doing with their friends, right? And so I think that there is an example of what this could look like in a relationship.
Hmm.
Um, Other ways this could look like is you guys have a conflict, your partner needs a lot of alone time, and you need to process through. You feel neglected when they take that alone time, right? Another way that this can look is your partner needs a lot of time with their family, and that's overwhelming for you. Right? What, you got any other ones?
Well, I wanted to, I'll piggyback off of them to say like there's I think that a big part of this is really understanding and knowing your partner and knowing your relationship. And I think at the beginning of a relationship, it's easy to see these things as like neglect or like something's wrong or have a reaction, some sort of, um, it feels like this strong disconnection, right? And we start to get anxious, like our attachment styles start to get activated. We start to get anxiously attached, right? Does this mean that they don't care about me, that they don't love me, right? We start to make kind of a bigger meaning of the differences in our relationship. As you really understand and get to know each other, where you can say, okay, I understand that my partner has more of a need to, be with friends and be out, and I have more of a need to have my alone time. Um, I understand that my partner needs to spend more time with their family, and I don't really have that as much, right? So part of developing security in the relationship is really understanding your partner, your partner's needs, and your needs, and being able to communicate through them. Where at the beginning of the relationship, something that once meant, you're abandoning me, you don't love me, you don't care about me, after years might be more of an understanding of like, we just have these innate differences. Now, in order to do that, something that's really important is communicating through them, right? So, like at the beginning of the relationship, when you're starting to make meaning of, it feels like you don't care about me, I'm feeling disconnected, where you're having these conversations, the way in which you learn about your partner, you learn about the relationship is to talk through this in a way that's really productive.
Mhm.
Because this can be a situation that either brings you closer together, where you say, hey, listen, I've been feeling a little neglected. I feel a little disconnected from you. I would love to take some time and spend some time together so that we can be more connected. And I want to understand, like, why are you out all the time? Like, why are you hanging out with friends all the time? Like, what's going on? Like, does it mean you don't love me? Does it mean you don't want to hang out with me? Where your partner can respond and say, like, no, I just like need some time with my friends. Like, that's how I get
Mhm.
recharged. I'm extroverted. Um, so the way in which you really grow to know and understand the relationship, and
Yeah.
the way in which these differences don't have the same effect on you, is to have these conversations where you're talking through the differences and you're growing
So
together.
let's play this game for a minute. Okay, so someone's asking like versus them like neglecting the relationship is the question this person
Yeah.
wrote in. So do you think that there could be a time though when someone is too involved in other places of their life, right? Whether that be their family of origin, whether it be their friends, whether that be their job, whether that be alcohol, right? You know what I mean? Like other like things
Yes.
that we use as avoidance. Like
Mhm.
how do people know the line between that?
And that's where I think the communication comes in, right? Where it's like, okay,
So what if
let's,
I say to my partner, okay, well, do you have to hang out with your friends 6 nights a week?
right.
And they're like, yeah,
And that's where you're like, listen, that's not working for me.
I guess it's good to know that up front.
And right, it's not working for me. And that is where I'm feeling neglected in our relationship. Right. And so, we talk about kind of compromise in a relationship where like maybe you were going out 5 nights a week with your friends, you get into a relationship and like you have this whole other section, right, that you have to give to. It's like if you didn't have a job, right? Let's say you didn't have a job, you could give so much to so many different parts of your life. When you have a job, you can't give as much as you once did. So it's like, where are you putting your energy and your resources? And like, are you putting your energy into your relationship? Right.
Mhm.
Or are you neglecting your relationship? So that's where kind of the balance and understanding comes in of like, where do we put our energy and where do we put our resources? And is the amount of time we're giving to our relationship, is it working for the relationship? Is it helping it to grow? Is it helping it to thrive? So like that's where the communication comes in of like, is this still working for our relationship?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, so let's go with this one. My partner needs space when we argue, and I need connection and resolution. How do we meet in the middle when our conflict styles are so different? So, someone who needs space, that doesn't mean they take space for 3 months, but space is incredibly valid, especially because if you need connection and resolution, it's often anxiety driven and it's often avoidance driven if you need space. So those two things we have to come to the middle with, right? So if I need space, here's what we say. We talked about this before. What is healthy timeout? Okay, here's what we say to clients to do. The person who needs a timeout asks for a timeout, needs their space, and they ask for 20 minutes, right? They go and they take care of themselves. At the 20 minutes mark, the other person's going to check in and say, are you ready to connect? And they can say yes or no. And then they get another 20 minutes. Okay. And then at the end of those 20 minutes, they're going to ask again, hey, can we talk now? They get another 20 minutes. That equals an hour. It does, right? 20, 20, 20, right?
Yes. 24/60. Yes.
Okay. And that means an hour. At that point, your nervous system should be regulated enough for conversation. If it's not, there's something else going on that it's no longer needing emotional regulation to think it through.
Yeah.
It's avoidance.
Yeah. And the person who is anxious, right? The one who's like, I need to get this done.
Yeah.
During that time, it's your responsibility to also be
Be
able to
regulating.
regulate your own emotions, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sitting there in those 20 minutes and just thinking, well, what are they going to say? I need to talk to them. I need to talk to them. That is not regulating your own emotions. To
No, it's white knuckling it.
It's white knuckling it, right? I just need to wait. I need to wait for them. I need them to soothe me. So, developing skills to be able to self soothe in those moments is really, really important because then you're not relying on your partner to take care of you, right? So,
Well, and you're also not, your partner comes back regulated after 60 minutes and you're like a fucking bat out of hell.
right,
That is not going to make your partner open up. It's going to scare your partner back down again.
right. Right. So for you to have emotional regulation and enter into that conversation being more emotionally regulated so that your partner can be more open if they tend to be more avoidant and shut down, right? Then you being able to regulate your own emotion is going to help invite them into the conversation, just as we're saying. So part of this is having the conversation about your arguments outside of the time in which you're arguing. So, talking about your communication while you argue to say, hey, listen, I recognize this is a pattern for us. I know that I like jump on you and I need to, I need to fix it. And then when I do that, you shut down, right? It's a cycle. And let's talk about what's the best way that we can approach this. I can sit with myself, I can regulate my emotions and do something that allows me to regulate my emotions. And I understand that you need your space, so you can take your space. And then every 20 minutes, we'll come back together, we'll reinitiate and see how that works for us. Um, Talk about that process outside of the argument because when you're in it, right, and you try to talk about it, you're both heightened, right? If you're anxious, you're going to, say, well, we need to talk about this now. If you're the avoidant one, you're going to be more shut down. So talk about that process and come up with a plan outside of the argument and try to do it next time.
Yeah. How to manage different expectations around sex. There is no chance in hell you and your partner are going to have the same sex drive.
Yes.
Just saying, statistically, mathematically, scientifically, what are the chances that two people have exactly the same wants and needs
Yes.
and interest in sex, sexual
Yeah.
desire, right?
Yeah.
So you can pretty much guarantee there's going to be different expectations around sex. My concern is the word expectation as opposed to communication,
Yeah.
right? So expectation is what I put onto you and what I come into stuff. Typically, expectations are not communicated.
Yeah.
So for many people, let's talk about someone who grew up with a lot of conversation around what sex should look like in a marriage, right? So maybe those conversation was it's your job to be with your partner. It's your job to please your partner. It's your partner's job to please you. Healthy sex life has sex every single day, right? Like we get a lot of messaging about what we should be doing. And that creates a ton of expectations that are typically very unhealthy,
Yeah.
unconscious, and not really talked about. And it also then makes them not consensual. So, different expectations around sex, start talking about them. I understand that talking about sex is not sexy. I am not saying it is, but sometimes it can turn into it because safety can be sexy.
Yeah.
So if I feel like I understand what my partner's going into, right? Like if I don't know what I'm doing in my job and I show up all the time and I don't understand what the expectations are, I'm often going to feel out of control.
Mm-hmm.
If I understand what's happening and I get to speak to my piece, the issue could also happen is if we both voice our expectations and neither one of us are willing to hear the other person. I'm not willing to hear why you're interested in sex. You're not willing to hear why I'm not interested in sex. and we're not willing to come to some type of compromise between us,
Hmm.
then it becomes me versus you as opposed to us together.
Right. How do how do we make sex work for the relationship? This I am interested to talk about these two questions. They're because they're kind of the same. One, his love language is touch, and I'm overstimulated at the end of the day. And someone else said, I don't love being touched, and my partner craves so much physical affection.
Wait, and someone else said how to be a chronic cuddler when I some wait, how to be with a chronic cuddler when sometimes I need physical space to myself. Wow, a lot of people have this situation.
Wow. So, but the one thing I want to mention is that like the in the relationship, affection kind of falls out the window when the thought is if affection happens, it's going to turn into sex,
Mm.
right? Sometimes we shut off affection as a way to say, like, I don't want this to lead to sex. So
Yeah,
communicate.
right. Okay,
Yeah.
like right, like I might be interested in cuddling, but not I'm not interested in sex. But my
Yeah.
concern is if I cuddle with you, then I'm giving you the wrong message. You
Yes.
automatically assume it. And I think especially for women, we got all this messaging growing up about being a tease or giving someone blue balls,
Yes.
right? Like in heterosexual relationships, I think you have these fears and narratives a lot more.
Yeah. And so I think that also is something that's subconscious to us sometimes is that we're like, well, I can't, and you get so used to
Your body does
shutting them
this.
down. Your body does this, right?
The tense up, the tense up,
Because you're like, oh, I can't be
the butthole
affectionate, right?
clench. You know what I'm
Can't,
talking about.
yeah, yeah, gotcha. I can't be affectionate right now because, they're gonna think I want to have sex, and then it's gonna turn into sex. So, um, I know this is probably getting exhausting to hear, but like communicating even around that is really important, right? To say, like, yeah, let's say I want to cuddle, but I don't want this turning into sex. I want to hug,
Yeah.
but I don't want this turning into sex.
I think one of my favorite things that Emily Nagoski talks about. So Emily Nagoski has two fabulous books. The first one is Come as You Are, and the second one is Come Together. And I love that in Come Together, she talks a lot about like still to this day, she'll do interviews and people will be like, well, what do you do? And she's like, talk about sex. And then like great couples will come back and she's like, well, you guys talk about it. They're like, no. She's like, well, what do you want me to keep saying?
Right, right.
Like that's the really rough part about being a therapist sometimes
Yeah.
is sometimes it sounds like we're saying the same fucking shit and we are.
Yeah. And people are
Right.
probably
I
like,
see that
I don't.
there's a subreddit about therapists and people are like, I feel like my therapist is always saying the same thing. And I'm typically a lurker and I don't write stuff, but I want to be like, yeah, they definitely fucking are saying the same shit.
Yeah. And also sometimes you can't hear it until you're ready to hear it.
Yeah.
Of course you don't want to talk about sex. Of course you don't want to talk about anything. It's so annoying. It's the worst. I'm just going to validate that first, right? Of course, you don't want it
I
doesn't.
disagree. I'm the opposite of you, though. I'm like, let's talk about this until we're blue in the
Oh,
face and
yeah.
we're bleeding from our fucking gums.
Right. For those of you who are like, I don't want to talk about this, I feel that. Okay. I'm just like not
And
interested.
I'm like, why doesn't my partner want to talk about this all day long? Let's over intellectualize. But mine goes different, right? Because as my therapist likes to say, Emily, you love to talk, but you hate to be vulnerable.
Right. Right.
Talk, 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 talk.
Well, both, right? Both things are protection from
Yes.
vulnerability in different ways. And so,
Mm. Say
so
that again. Explain that again.
both over talking, over intellectualizing, and shutting down and not talking at all are a protection from vulnerability and real connection.
Because what happens if I start having this conversation with my partner and it changes things? It
Right.
changes how I see them. It changes how I see me. I realize that we're not as compatible. I realize I'm going to have to change something. I don't want to do that. This is working enough as it is. We will say in couples sometimes a couple come in and one person's like, I'm unhappy with my sex life. And I'm like, and the other person's like, I'm fine with it. If one person is unhappy, there's a problem.
Right. There's something, right. There's something off.
Yeah.
So
There's
putting it,
enough. You matter enough. So
yeah,
even if your partner is fine with your sex life, if you are not, that matters.
yes. So putting it on the table, right? Being able to look at it, being able to communicate about it, even as opposed to just clenching up when your husband goes to hug you. Acknowledge it, right? To say, someone wrote in about being overstimulated. Hey, listen, I'm overstimulated. Like I want to hug you. Just give me a second, right? I can initiate it, right? That there's really understand what's happening in those moments for you when your partner goes to touch you or your partner goes to hug you, right? Because your body might be having an initial reaction
Yeah.
to
Also,
say,
can I say
yeah,
this person said his love language is touch and I am overstimulated by the end of the day. What would it be like for you to initiate touch, text, for you to initiate touch earlier in the day?
yeah,
You know, by the time you get to bed and you were like totally done, maybe that means that intimacy in your life needs to be morning and afternoon.
yeah. And what kind of, is there a certain type of physical touch that's easier for you? Right? Like holding hands, right? Is holding hands easier than like a hug, whatever it is,
Well, you know
right?
what's funny is like for me, if I'm overstimulated or overtouched, especially like when I was breastfeeding, this was like a big
Yeah,
one. I breastfed my daughter for a very long time. I was like, don't fucking touch me, man. Like
yeah.
this was very difficult for me. But I had no problem giving my partner massages.
Wow.
You know me, I've always said I would like to be an esthetician and I would give him facials. Like
That's
I'm like, I
so
give him a little
nice.
facial massage, give him a little back. And that was fine for me. I had no issue touching him
It's you being touched.
exactly because I was already felt like a milk farm.
Right. So that I think is important, right? So like what
Yeah.
kind of physical touch is being initiated? Is
And what
there,
works for you guys?
and what works for you, right? Is there other physical touch? Because right now, this is obviously, I'm assuming, I'm just guessing. Your partner goes in for something, you tense up, push them away,
Yeah.
right? Then
And
rejection
then
happens.
here's what happens. We're gonna talk about another phrase. And then you're always like, we're never romantic. We don't have enough intimacy.
Right.
That's what we call a double bind,
Yes.
right? Your partner is trying to initiate intimacy and romance
Yeah.
in their way they know how.
Yeah.
You're rejecting it, and then you're like, oh, why don't they love me?
Right.
It's mixed messaging.
And you don't,
They're trying to show you in their way. You
right.
have to help them understand a different way to do it.
And it might be happening so quickly, right? Like it might
Yeah.
be, you might be in the middle of like cooking dinner or like getting something together. Your partner comes up to give you a hug, right? And you got a lot going on, you're stressed, whatever it is. And so your reaction, right, might be coming from everything that you're dealing with in those moments, but be aware of what's happening for you. And when you have space, right, to give to the relationship in some way, when you're like, okay, I'm open to this, I can rub my partner's back, whatever it is, um, really just being in tune with that for yourself, I think is important.
Yeah. Someone has a different view on politics. Is there a way now, as we get farther and farther and farther away from each other on the spectrum, I think that hard conversations become more difficult.
Yeah.
If we're a little bit more moderate and have some different ideas, we can probably hear each other. But the reality is our current political system in the United States is so fucking polarized.
Yeah.
This is becoming harder and harder and harder. It is why it is leading to cutoffs in families. It is why it's leading to divorces. It's incredibly problematic.
Yeah. And it's leading to endings in relationships.
Yes, all the time. Yes. And endings with people living in America.
Yeah.
People are moving. You
Yeah.
know, like this is like it's an emergency situation. And as
Yeah.
couples therapists, we are seeing this all the time. People are getting divorced. This is ending marriages. It's incredibly sad
Yeah.
to watch people cut off their children and their parents. This is really fucking hard. And I get why they're doing it. If I was in a relationship,
Yeah.
my partner and I had completely different political views. I don't think my marriage would be working right now. Would
Yeah.
yours?
No, no chance. But so I think that that's an important piece, right? Like, because I think with politics, a lot of it is like, okay, what are my values? It's highlighting
Uh-huh.
differences in values.
Yes.
And I think that when, right, there's so many times in which, maybe that's not as highlighted when we're going on our day, going about our day-to-day lives, but
Yeah.
because it's so polarized right now, it's really highlighting differences in values that we
Yeah.
have. And so the
Well, it's one
question
thing if
is,
you disagree on like a tax system. It's another one if I like disagree on like value of someone's life or healthcare, right? Like
right,
those are like very different. And so the hard part is like, can we communicate effectively?
right,
Do we need to communicate about this in our household? Can I hear you, respect it and not agree with it?
yeah,
Or is it getting really to the point where there is no ability to have productive conversations here?
right,
And then what does that bring our options to?
right. I had another one. I lost away. Where'd it go? Hold on. Someone wrote in. Oh, I lost
Also,
it.
I am so pregnant. I feel like all I'm doing is breathing into this microphone.
I
And
don't hear
so
it. I don't hear it at all.
and so if anyone is aware, if you can hear this in the editing room, can you please try to make this cool?
Someone wrote in how to handle morning person versus night owl.
You have to, here's how it happens in my life. I go to
Because
bed early as shit. My husband goes to bed incredibly late. He ends up awake either way because we have a child. So
that's we do the same thing. I go to bed before my husband. I think that people like there's like a thought of like you have to go to bed with your partner.
no.
That's not true.
When do you ever?
Never.
We
Actually,
never fall asleep together.
sometimes we will, depending on
It's cute.
yeah. Some if like if he it's like if he has a long day the next day and he needs to go to bed early, or if I
And I'll
don't
come
have a
with you.
long day and I'm like, I'll stay up late. You know what I mean? Like sometimes
Yeah.
it'll be our time to like hang out together. But here is how I've learned to deal with this because sometimes I'm like, I need to go to bed and he's staying up and I'm like, do not wake me up. Get yourself some earplugs.
Wait, you
Get
literally just told me like 2 weeks ago that they were not working for you anymore.
that was one. No, one of them fell out.
Oh, one of them fell out, and
One
then
of them
that goes
fell
away.
out.
Okay, I
But when
understand.
they're in, life
Why
changing.
do I have a fear of wearing earplugs to bed? Why does that scare me?
I kind of did too. I was always like, ugh, earplugs. Like, ugh.
Yeah, why does that scare me
I'm
though? A
not sure.
safety risk.
You should,
What
I don't
safety
know,
risk would
like
there
it's
be? There
gonna
probably is in my head.
like it's gonna go into your brain somehow. I'm not
Yes.
sure. I'm not sure. But I let me tell you, it is so if you're a light sleeper, it
Yeah,
is
the
so
move.
like do what you can to protect your sleep.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that something that happens is that and I did this to my husband when we first started. I had an expectation that he was going to go to bed earlier. Like if you are a morning
You thought
person,
he would just move on to your schedule?
yeah, I was like, why are you going to bed so late? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, it just like didn't make sense to me. Because also I have so much energy in the morning and I am
Same.
so tired at night.
Same. I'm useless after 4 p.m.
Right.
I got nothing left to give the world.
Right.
But you catch me at 8 a.m., I'm like, what's good? Let's rock it.
I like pop out of bed. So
Yeah.
and he gets energy at night, which is wild to me. So we've adjusted over time where I'm like, okay, I no longer expect you to have energy in the morning and, you know, like pop out of bed like I do. That
Mhm.
it honestly has turned into something that's quite helpful is that like I'll do things in the morning and he'll do things at night where we like, you know, I'll take the dog out, but you know, I'll get things together and then he will kind of handle that at nighttime because he has more energy than me.
Yeah.
So the one thing I would say, and this probably like spans across a lot of these questions, is like pushing your partner to try to be like you does not work.
Ooh. Trying to change your partner in general
Does not
doesn't
work.
work, right?
Your partner will change for themselves if they want to change.
Well, and I will say when life circumstances change, right? If you have a kid and all of a sudden your kid's waking up at 5, 6, all of a sudden your partner might change some of their sleep habits, or they don't. What happened in my marriage was my husband just got adjusted to getting less sleep
Right.
because he didn't stop going to bed late and now he just gets less sleep. Like last night, we both went to bed really, really early. We had hosted a gajillion people for Easter, whatever. My daughter came in our bed at 3 o'clock. She really likes to come in around 3 or 4 every single night at this point. I think especially as we get closer to the baby coming, we've noticed like a bit of a trend.
Yeah.
Um, and my husband was like, "Oh, yeah, I didn't really fall back asleep after that." He was like, "But I already got my 6 hours from before."
You just get used to it after a
And he
while.
just got used to it, right? So
Yeah.
that was his way of adjusting.
Yeah.
He never went to bed earlier, but he found a way to make it work.
You start to prove to yourself, like, I can function on 6 hours of sleep.
Not
Thought
me,
I
not me.
couldn't. Not
Oh,
me.
wait. Someone else said I'm more anxious and emotionally expressive, and my partner tends to shut down. How do I stop taking that personally? No offense, you're not that special. You're not that important. Your partner did that before you. They're
Yes.
doing that after you.
It
They're
is
doing
not
that in other
about you.
relationships in their life. That shit has nothing to do with you.
That is ingrained.
But you may be contributing towards it. If you keep talking, if you aren't attuned to them, if you don't give them space to open up, you could be like pushing like the head of a turtle back into the shell,
Right.
right? One of these
Yeah. Yeah.
situations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So It's not about you, but I want you to look at what could be my partner because those two things matter.
If you are taking it personally, how are you reacting to taking it personally, right? Your
Yeah.
reaction to your partner is maybe making them shut down more.
Yeah.
So recognize this is not about you. And if you can, once again, as we talked about earlier, regulate your emotions in that moment so that you're not pushing your partner even more, that's going to be really important.
Yeah. I really want to answer this one. How to connect but still get what I need. I get 2 hours of me time a day and I want to do what I need, but he gets upset that I want to be alone and read. You're allowed to be alone and read.
Yeah. Set those
Are you
boundaries.
also set a boundary? That's fine if they're upset. Someone is allowed to get upset when you set a boundary. I would be interested in how you connect with them in other ways,
Mm,
what time you do give to your partner, right? We do want to be considerate partners. Well, we talk about this a lot in sex. I say to people, hey, well, are you masturbating without them? There's nothing wrong with masturbating. Everyone should get to have sex with sex with themselves as much as they want. But I am interested of why you're not inviting your partner into that as well.
right.
So, what is it also like? Could your partner also read a book and give you space during that time? Could it be a house reading hour? But what is the other time you're giving? But at the end of the day, you set a boundary and someone gets upset. That's not your problem.
And what's the way in which you're setting a boundary too, right? If you're like, leave me alone, right? As opposed to like, hey, I need these, I need a few hours to,
Yeah.
to myself to get centered, whatever it is. The way in which you express that boundary is really important. A boundary is not a wall, right? A boundary is an
Yeah.
invitation to actually be closer to each other, right? The more centered you are with yourself, the more connected you are to yourself, the more connected you're going to be able to be with your partner after you have that time. So,
Yeah.
the way in which you communicate that to your partner is really important.
And with communication, the next question, my spouse is blind. How do I balance my need for rest and their need to get out and about? So really great example about open conversation.
Yeah.
Hey, let's look at our week all together. What are some things we're going to need to do to get out and about as a couple? I would also be interested in at what point did this person lose their vision?
Mm-hmm.
If it's a newer loss, life could maybe feel really overwhelming or going out of their own might. If you are born blind and it's been your whole life, you're typically pretty independent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, and have figured out, different ways to adjust. But I think that it's the conversation here.
Yeah.
I also really need this time too.
And
What are ways? Yeah,
I wonder what's keeping you, if you haven't, from expressing that,
yeah,
right? From talking through that and saying, like, I also need time for myself.
yeah. Jen, we missed out on a dear Emma Jen. We lost time.
Oh, it's over.
I know.
Oh,
Love you.
well, we'll get you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Shrink Chicks.
We'll see you back here next week for another session.
In the meantime, if you want a question answered or a topic discussed, follow us on Instagram at ShrinkChicks. And if you're looking to get connected with a therapist like us to start or continue your therapeutic journey, visit thetherapygroup.com. Just fill out a contact form on our website, and we will personally match you with one of our amazing therapists. And for all of our therapists and group practice owners out there, we also offer group practice consulting.
And if you're looking to support yourself further and support our show, check out our amazing merch options at shrinkchicks.com/merch and our Know Yourself, Grow Yourself journal on Amazon. Also, if you'd be so kind, we'd love a rating review and for you to share with a friend or an enemy or a mother-in-law, honestly, whoever needs it, so that we can keep reaching more people on our mission to bring mental health topics to your ears every week.
Thanks for being here with us. And don't forget to grow yourself. You got to know yourself.